Yo guys, Vision SGN here, bringing you Marvel Rivals' full Mr. Fantastic guide following the latest Season 1.5 update, where he has now received some great buffs. I'll be breaking down how to play as Mr. Fantastic, explaining all of his abilities, including his team up, as well as his strengths and weaknesses. This is episode 4 of my new Hero Series guide, with all of the previous episodes on the channel, and on that note, let's get right into it. As we already know, Mr. Fantastic is a hybrid duelist in Marvel Rivals, who can deal both great damage as well as tank incredibly well. Once you get the hang of how to use his abilities properly, generating elasticity and learning his role, he becomes very hard to eliminate and is super fun to use. Mr. Fantastic's sustain as a damage blocker is unmatched. I actually nearly have him in my top 3 as best damage blockers in the game right now, coming in at number 4 overall and number 1 for duelists, which I've actually made a separate video on and is linked in the description below, which explains all of my reasons as to why and in more detail. Now, as for this character and a duelist, he has a pretty high base health of 350 and a potential maximum health of 950, which I'll explain below. He moves at the same speed as pretty much all of the characters at 6 meters per second. He has this passive ability called Elastic Strength, which is his main strength as a player. When using his abilities, he generates elasticity, which boosts his attack power, and when reaching full elasticity, triggers an inflated state that grants you a 450 bonus shield and deals 75 damage per hit, which can be applied to multiple enemies per hit. This state lasts 6 seconds and increases his movement speed by 20% whilst active. And this pretty much is the learning curve for this character. When players don't really know how to generate his elasticity and how to use it to your advantage, that's where you'll see most players die with him quite quickly, whereas the good ones, and you'll know when you've come across them, they just cannot die. They seem to just always turn into this inflated state where they're either blocking damage or they're dealing an insane amount of damage and just staying alive for a long time. As for his abilities and how you use them, here's a list of all of his abilities and some practice gameplay of me demonstrating each one. His primary attack, the Stretchy Punch, deals 60 damage per hit with a 15 meter range and can hit multiple enemies with each hit. It has a hit speed of 1.1 per second and gains 5 elasticity per hit, which is obviously the key for this character as I mentioned, as you want to be getting into that inflated state as often as possible, generating more health and dealing more damage. As for his L2 ability, the Distended Grip, extends his arms forward to entangle an enemy and then pressing your primary attack to either pull them in towards him or select another enemy, knocking them both airborne against each other. This deals 20 projectile damage initially and up to 20 meters away, and then a further 20 damage for the second hit, which extends up to 25 meters away. Once you have a target in hand, you can then pull the target, dealing a further 50 damage, or if you manage to grab 2, you can deal 30 damage for a dual target pull. This ability generates 30 elasticity every time it's used and has a 6-second cooldown. As for his L1 ability, Flexible Elongation, where you gain a shield by selecting a target and then dash towards them, dealing damage to enemies and granting yourself and allies a shield. This shield provides you with 75 health, as well as your teammates with 75 health, and can be used up to 15 meters away, dealing 30 damage, and generates 30 elasticity. Now, this ability has a 10-second cooldown, but it has 2 charges that you can use. Now, as a little tip, if you use this ability twice, and when paired with your Distended Grip to reach full elasticity, you'll be at 500 health from using these 2 abilities. And then when you generate a 450 additional bonus health for reaching full elastic state, means that you'll have a 950 health bar for 6 seconds. And you can then constantly keep doing this if you have your abilities and time them right, making them very sustainable and really hard to deal with. As for his R1 ability, his Reflexive Rubber, which stretches the body to absorb damage before launching that stored damage in the target direction for 60% of total damage absorbed at a 80 meter per second speed. This has a shield value of 300, it lasts 3 seconds, but also slows you by 35% movement speed when it's active. It also has a cooldown of 12 seconds, but is super effective when used right. Now, it's definitely worth noting that Mr. Fantastic can aggro aerial players such as Iron Man. He's not effective as such, but definitely worth trying out and adding into your gameplay, because some aerials just think they're safe from certain characters, and this one definitely is not one of those characters. You can deal damage to them and can annoy them and stop them being so effective. So as I mentioned before, he's a great hybrid duelist, probably one of the most versatile characters in the game, with incredible range at dealing damage to both aerial and ranged players who sit on the backline, as well as brawl all kinds of players. His damage blocking ability is unmatched, as well as his sustain to keep himself going and just constantly aggravate those backline players. As for his team up ability with the Invisible Woman, known as Wedded Harmony, this is where she taps into her powers, channeling Sonic Might to fortify the Fantastic Four, and where Mr. Fantastic is granted a damage resistance, and once activated, they can continuously generate bonus health whilst making up for lost health. It has a 100% damage to health ratio, has a 5-second duration, and has a 20-second cooldown. Now, as for his ultimate ability, Brainiac Bounce, which was actually just buffed in the new season update, allows Mr. Fantastic to leap upwards and smash the ground, which slows enemies within range. Mr. Fantastic can then leap again and deals damage within a 10-meter radius. This ultimate deals more damage at closer range than it does at maximum range. The initial leap deals 70 damage, but every time you leap, you deal an additional 14 damage per hit on top of that. You have a minimum of 3 leaps with this ultimate, but if you hit an enemy successfully, you're able to then keep bouncing for up to 6 hits, which deals a maximum of 140 damage on the final hit, which is super powerful when you think about it. As you hit the ground, you then slow enemies for 3 seconds by 10% of their overall movement speed. However, as this ultimate ability stacks, it means every time you hit an enemy, the ability will continue to slow the enemy for an additional 10%, meaning you can slow that enemy by a maximum of 60%, leaving them very vulnerable and easy to eliminate for your team. Now, this ability is one of the best and most misunderstood crowd control abilities in the entire game, in my opinion. However, with its damage buff from the latest season, I think it's a lot more viable than before, and people will begin to take note of that, so you'll probably see him used slightly more. As well as all the buffs for this character, there was a slight nerf to the ultimate, as it increased in cost from 2,800 energy to 3,400, meaning you're going to earn this ultimate a bit slower and see it slightly less. And there you have it. That's the full guide for Mr. Fantastic. He's a 3-star difficulty hero who's really fun to use, and in this latest update, you've got to give him a try. If you've enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know down below if you have any tips and tricks that you've learned so far, or if you have any cool clips that you'd like to share. I'm Vision SGN, and I'll see you in the next one.